Hello Redditors, welcome back to Tales Against Humanity. Now, let's get started. In today's episode, these monitors need to go now. Parts canon. Papers please. Verify power. Hello all, long-time lurker, first-time poster. You have read all this before. First liner and only been in the job for a handful of months, so I don't really know what I'm talking about. At my company we are going through a lot of audits right now, and part of that has been cutting down the amount of inventory the IT team has and rebuilding the asset management system from scratch. The entirety of the old IT team was useless and were replaced with us. We got close to the end of the day that this was due by and were feeling good. A lot of literal trash had been thrown out. What was too valuable to throw out was organized. New asset management system was in place, and we were 99% confident everything was on there. It was then that the head of the audit asked about the IT inventory that was in the basement. We didn't even know we had anything down there, so we went and checked it out. We found probably around 150 older 22 monitors and started freaking out. We had no idea where they came from, wasn't on old asset management at all. We were informed that we couldn't just throw them out either, and that they had to be responsibly recycled, but we did not have the time to organize them before the audit anymore. After a ton of bickering between different departments, I came up with the idea of just emailing everyone in the office and saying they were free to collect, take as many as you want. To my surprise, this was signed off. I thought we would get rid of a handful and have to start driving to every charity shop in town to donate what was left over the weekend. Not even a minute after sending that email, we had a queue going all the way out of the basement, and probably about an hour later we managed to shift every single monitor. These people went insane for these monitors that were probably worth less than PS100 each. Lesson learned. People love free shit. Now, let's go for story 2. Parts canon. We had contracts with our major suppliers. They would provide next-day support for all hardware issues. The fix provided was exactly the same every time. We called it the parts canon. The parts canon came in 3 different types. Type 1, fire everything. A technician would pull the permanent storage drives, throw it into a new machine and call it done. Type 2, strip and fire. A technician would bring a few tools, strip out to the specific broken part at our office, and replace it. Type 3, misfire. A technician would turn up, claim the fix was too complicated to complete on-site, and attempt to take the machine with them. These were the worst. As a bored IT office, we play a game. The vendors always manage to send a different person, so guess how long the technician has worked for the vendor? We'd each get to watch the entire fix from our desk, then shout out a guess as to the number of months. It was always weeks/months the technician had been working for the vendor. As the technician was leaving the office, we'd always ask, whoever got closest won. Everyone had a different theory to tell how experienced the vendor's technician was. Sleepy Tech, Sleepy, usually shouted out his guess first. He swore he could tell by the swiftness of the technician unscrew the case. Junior Tech, Junior, usually was the one showing the machine and answering the vendor technician's questions, so he'd try and scope it out by how well they seemed to know parts numbers/model numbers, etc. My theory relied on the post-fix testing. If the technician didn't put a single screw back in, and try to hold the components in place while testing. That was an experienced tech, probably 3 months plus experience. If the technician put the screws back in but didn't put the covers back on, probably 2-month tech. If the technician put every screw back, put the covers back on, then tried to turn it back on for testing, well, that's a new technician. It was a stormy day that Junior let in a vendor technician for a board swap out. Junior, here's the machine for you. Vendor, ah, perfect. Let's get this over with. The vendor put his bags down and grabbed a screwdriver. He deftly started taking the screws off the machine, only looking up when he heard a shout from across the room. Sleepy, 4. Vendor, huh? Junior, oh, don't mind him. Say, what's the next model up from this one again? Vendor was taking out the old board. Vendor, up from this one. Oh, you'd be looking at the next range up. Unfortunately, this one was the biggest they made in this chassis. Junior, 2. The vendor looked at Junior strangely after he'd shouted 2, seeming to the void. He started putting the new board back in. After attaching the cords, he looked like he was going to power it on, 0 screws. I decided to call out from my office. Me, 6. As soon as the power reached the board, a POP was heard. Smoke started rising up. Junior reflectively. Unplug the power. Vendor, oh no, the magic smoke. Junior, the what? I walked out of my office and over to the table. The new board was fried. Me? Darn, the angry pixies really got that board, huh? Vendor, yeah, must have been a bad board. Don't worry, I have another one somewhere. Vendor dug into his bag and found another board. He unplugged the burnt board and put in the new one. Vendor, let's give that another go. As soon as the power was turned back on, we heard another pop. The smell of burning electronics once again filled the office. Vendor, well, as %T. Me? Yeah, looks like something else might be wrong. Vendor went out to his van and came back with a huge stack of parts. Vendor, sorry guys, this might take a little while. I looked it up. These newer boards aren't compatible with your older periphery board, so we're going to have to replace almost everything. Me, I'll leave you to it. Thankful it was a fixed-price contract. I watched from my desk as much like the ship of Theseus, everything was replaced. Eventually, the vendor screwed everything back in and went for the power. Vendor, it boots. After everything was packed up, Junior started leading the vendor out of the office. Junior, so vendor, how long have you worked for vendor? Now, let's go for story 3. Papers, please. When I joined a former employer, I was given the task of replacing the paper on their photocopiers, all 20 of their photocopiers, across a huge campus. Every photocopier was used regularly and needed replacing around 2/3 times a day. They were locked with an individual key specific to that photocopier. After only a few days, I spoke with management to query as to why I was assigned to this task, as it was taking up a significant period of my time for such a needless task, and I was one of only 2 technicians employed for over 1,200 users. Their response was that they don't trust their users to fill up the paper trays correctly, and that the task was imperative to my role. Let's just say I didn't stay at that organization for very long. Now, let's go for story 4. This is my first post on Reddit. Sorry for any formatting issues. I used to work for a small-town ISP in Arkansas as the IT guy in the early 2000s. Most of my day would consist of me trying not to fall asleep at my desk due to boredom, but sometimes I would get interesting requests from my boss. The most interesting of which was to climb 4 to 5 ft up a pine tree to install a security camera. Fun times. Well, one day I get a frantic call from the owner's personal assistant saying that the internet for the owner's main house had stopped working not good due to it being a T1 line that is converted a couple of times between copper and fiber due to distance. So I had to drive 3.5 hours one way to his house to fix the issue. I drive up and the PA is losing his mind because the internet is down and the owner is growing very angry. So I make my way to the network cabinet, i.e. code closet, and immediately see the issue. The power strip they are using for the fiber to copper converter that is feeding the main house is turned off. I kneel down and turn it back on, and all the lights come back on, and the internet is restored. Turns out someone tossed something in the closet, and it must have turned off the power strip. So 7 hours of driving for a 3-minute fix. Make sure to like and subscribe for more interesting stories.